Welcome to the iNetrepreneur Radio Show. We are so honored to bring you your host, the ultimate celebritypreneur, connecting businesses and celebrities worldwide. Winner of the Networking Organization of the Year, best-selling author, magazine publisher, trainer, and owner and founder of Network Together and the iNetrepreneur Media Network from magazines, TV, and radio network, we're excited to bring you your host, Mr. Robert W. Jones.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. It is 2:30 here in Arizona. Same time frame as the West Coast, California, Oregon, I think, and Washington. Just wanted to say a shout out to everyone out there, and I'm glad you're here with us. And I mean, I was just getting up this morning. I was thinking like, oh my goodness, this is June 30th. I mean, June 30th, wait a minute. I mean, that means January, February, March, April, May, and June have all gone by. Tomorrow it's July 1st, and it's like we're already halfway through the year. I mean, I don't know about you, but this year has just blown by. And I'm kind of hoping that there's a little bit of magic dust that slows down the second half of the year. But, you know, there are all the changes and the new normal and et cetera. It's just been quite, an exciting time. I'll say that this last year and a half. I'm really excited. I want to go through a little bit of our, housekeeping for what we have going on in the network. Coming up on July 28th is your Unchained Yourself Professional Women's Conference. That's July 28th. It's 9 to 5 p.m. It's $25 for the tickets to get in there. It is an all-day event. We have panels. We have, great speakers. We're going to have a lot of breakouts and networking. The last few events that I've helped my wonderful wife there was hugging, there was crying, there was shouting, there was learning, there was breakthroughs. I mean, it is an amazing event. So if you are looking to get powered up and level up, Sean and her speakers are going to go over the 8 most pressing challenges that a woman entrepreneur has right now and how to overcome them and blow up like a glow stick. So, please look at ntevents.net, go to July 28th and reserve your place in what I would call a little part of history. Also, our book, the 365 Days of Transformational Quotes, part of the Art of Connection Legacy series, which is in the Library of Congress, is a #1 international bestseller. I just want to remind everyone the early bird special of $197 for a page in the book won't be there forever. The regularly priced page, as set by the publisher, is $550 to have your own published page in the book. And I want to remind everyone a published page is just that. It's, you write your content for your page, but we have proofers, we have editors, we have the designer, we have a team that does the manuscript and the publishing and the marketing. Everything else is done for you. It takes most entrepreneur authors about an hour to complete their page. So take a look at this and reserve a special date in your life that's meaningful for you. And don't forget, again, it's in the Library of Congress. It's a #1 international bestseller, and we have also created a lot of first-time authors. So look at this as a great legacy for yourself and your business. Not everyone can say that they're all of those things. Check mark, check mark, check mark. Also, go to ntevents.net. I mentioned that earlier. ntevents.net has our networking meetings, our academy classes, events, summits, and so much more. That is kind of like the playbook for everything that's the iNetrepreneur Network. Like us on Facebook at iNetrepreneur Radio. And subscribe to our magazine. And we also have a women's magazine that is just launching, and I'm going to put that by next week, and I'm going to have that scroll across the screen. It's called The Contemporary Women. It's a way for women. My wife calls it like a cross between Forbes and another magazine, which is cool. I know it's cool, so I don't know. My wonderful wife knows that. But with that said, I'm glad that you're here today, and I'm really excited on bringing our guest for the show in this entire hour. So we're going to get into some deep diving of her. And here she is, Michelle Smith, keynote speaker, trainer, coach, and owner of Z&B Consulting. I'm so glad that you're here with us today, Michelle. Coming in from, where are you at right now?
I'm in the Chicagoland area, out in the suburbs here in Chicago.
out in the Chicagoland area. And, if you had watched our last show, you will know that Z and B has a special meaning for Michelle. I know a lot of people try to guess what that meaning is, but very few know what the Z and what the B stands for. Michelle, could you tell us what it means?
Yeah, it stands for Zach and Ben, my two boys. I have a 20-year-old son and a 14-year-old son. And when I started my business about 10 years ago, it really was with this whole idea of I want to be able to support businesses and support nonprofits, but I also want to enjoy being a mom and I don't want the life sucked out of me. So I want to be able to help others do the same. So naming the business after them was a good way to constantly keep that in the forefront.
And I really love that because I one thing I like to do when I write is I like to alliterate things because I like poetry, and it's so wonderful when you're able to get meaning and then meaning from that meaning, and by naming your business that way, I think that you've done that. But you already brought up something that I kind of want to talk about is you know it it sometimes being a man, and I know a lot of men, do we wear a lot of hats? Yes, we do. But I really think it still gets back to women, certainly, I think more often than not, wear many more hats than men. And you talked about, just being a mom, being a business owner, an entrepreneur, having a diversity of your career and your background. What keeps you in your drive to just, keep maintaining all these hats, Michelle?
It really is that feeling that comes from seeing the difference you're making in the world. That for me really is what it's all about. I'm also, in addition to all those hats you mentioned, I'm the president of my Rotary Club. And people ask, like, how do you do that? And I've served as the choir booster president. I'm on the parish council at my church. And there are a lot of things that I say no to, but the things that I say yes to, which is a lot, it's those that I know I'll be able to, number one, help make an impact and bring long lasting change to that organization when I say yes, but also that it won't throw my life into chaos in the process. And so I'll be able to do that and use my skills and talents. And I truly believe God has brought us each here for a reason, and that it's my job to do his work in the world. And if I feel I'm being called somewhere to share those skills and talents with people who don't have them, I say yes. And the joy comes from seeing the results that turn out in the process.
And that's what is something that sometimes I think about, when an entrepreneur. I have a saying, passion, without character, or passion without conviction, is just criminal. And I think definitely being a Christian business owner, you do have to live at a, or you do look at living at a different standard by being a Christian, leader and an entrepreneur as well. And I'm sure, it doesn't, like, one doesn't turn on and one turns off, when you're switching. These two hats are always worn at the same time, aren't they?
They really are. It's really just so in alignment, especially when you realize what it is. We're actually in the process of working on some rebrand to my website and getting ready to roll out a new one. I was just talking with my marketing team the other day. I'm like, and we can't forget to make sure that the faith is infused in there. And we can't forget to make sure this element is in there and that element. And they're like, so are we changing the message? I'm like, no, we're not changing the message. We're just enhancing it because all these things roll into one, and we want to make sure that people can connect. And interestingly enough, after that conversation, I went to a networking meeting and I ended up enrolling a new client there, and it was for the things I had just told them. So I shared afterwards, and they're like, obviously we're on the right track then because it's working.
And that to me is important because, I always say it takes the heart set, to lead the mindset. And so much of the time we're always talking mindset, talking mindset, talking mindset, but it really is that heart set, and that attitude and the emotion, and the spirit of what a person is. And that's what I think, makes a Christian business owner. They have an added, if it was real estate, fiduciary duty to everyone that they serve. And that's how I see you each and every time that I talk to you. And we're going to talk a few other things, in the show today. But what really strikes me is, sometimes it's like reading a book. You come back and then you reread the book. Well, sometimes you do a show and you kind of go look at the show and you kind of come back and you're like, man, I wish I would have asked this, or I needed to know that, or I wish I would have brought out that. And then all of a sudden I saw, Michelle, you were back, on my calendar for the show. And I thought, what, this is a great place to start, because we talked a little bit about your background, but my gosh, we didn't really talk about your career. And I'm almost getting goosebumps in it, because some of the things that some of the I would say, like, businesses or organizations you've been in have been in church, or they're not for profit, or they've been schools, or direct marketing, or daycares. I mean all of these businesses, they have a different mission, a different vision. They have a different way of the outreach. And you probably had to pivot multiple times in each business that you have. Tell me a little bit about what you've learned from maybe a couple of these different businesses that helps you apply what you do with your current clients.
Yeah, great question. And the interesting thing is, like, yeah, all those things are different, right? But the consistency is in all of them is that they all need people to come in the door, and they need to keep people. And the way that you keep people in the door is through relationship building. And that is key and foundational to everything I work with my clients on. And it's also in being incongruent with who you are, like we talked about a little bit ago. So in all of those places, yeah, they've all been different, but with all of them, it's been working with them through change management and working with them on getting more people in the door and keeping those people in the door, and doing that through relationship management skills, not this, what's the latest quick thing that we saw on the Facebook scroll that is going to help us get tons of money in our business. Like, there's so many things that we see that are like, do this and it's the quick fix. There aren't quick fixes. It's basic 101 stuff that goes way back to Dale Carnegie days, and even well before then, and all these, Think and Grow Rich. And it's all basic principles of, you treat people well, you stay top of mind, and they keep coming back to you, and they tell other people to do the same. And so in all those different places you mentioned, it's all the same philosophy.
And a lot of that philosophy really gets right down to, I said it before, you can have the sales and marketing, you can have the systems and the automation, you can have the best, vision and mission statement. But, one thing that I don't hear enough about is, having it doesn't mean that you're executing it. And see, I feel like the one word that I don't see in small business, and I don't see with entrepreneurs enough, is the word management, direct. We may hear some leadership, but I mean, deep rooted supervisory oversight leadership, a bit of mentoring, and I think it gets right back down to, you even worked in hospitals. And people go back to be served at the same place again and again and again, partly because of the relationship building, but it's also partly because of the user experience, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. And it's interesting that you talk about those things you just mentioned, because as you did, what come to my mind is all those things you mentioned, those are all the career things that I've been paid for. I've also been the choir booster president. I've been the person at my church who's led the women's retreats every year. And in those things, and even like I said, the Rotary president, in each of those things, that supervisory stuff is what's been involved. Those groups before I came in, they weren't thriving because nobody was leading them and nobody really knew how. And you would have someone who's a volunteer that wants to help, but they don't have the skill set to do the things that needed to be done. So in each of those volunteer situations, just like in all the places that I've worked in my career, I come in and I'm able to look to have an overhead view and see the big picture and say, okay, here are the things we need. Here are the people who fit in the right place on the bus. And here's what we need to train them in. And here's what, it doesn't matter how much we train this person, they're never going to learn this because that's not how they're wired. So let's shift them to another place. And it's
Oh,
meeting people where they're
mhm.
at in terms of their skill set, their availability, their desires. Because when we talked about in the beginning, how do you continue to do these things and be happy? Passion is the key, like you said earlier, because when I'm doing something and I don't feel passionate about it, that's when I know it should have been a no and when I step back from it. But if I'm doing it and it's easy and effortless and I'm feeling so jazzed because I did it, that's when I know it's in alignment with where God's wanting me to go.
And that's just it, because it should drive enough that it brings you energy. It doesn't kill your energy.
Right.
And you also brought up a lot of things here that I think really need to be brought out. When we go to school, middle school, elementary school, we go into college. There's your core classwork. There's your core courses to get your degree, and then you also have other extra type of coursework, for maybe interest, for your other interests, and you use that towards credit. But see, that happens in business a lot. We go in here and we're very linear in our training, and I'm just going to follow this particular outline, and I'm going to live that outline, and I'm going to try to be that thing or that person. But you brought up something that a lot of business owners, I think that they would be better served if they do those things called extracurricular activities. It's like being a part of a Rotary, or belonging in carrying through Moose Lodge, or taking some time away to work for a homeless shelter. These are all places where you're actually, it helps you with the relationship building. It also helps keep you grounded, and it helps you build an appreciation for the user experience, or the people that you work with, or the clients that you serve, etc., doesn't it?
It really does. And that's why I'm involved in another networking group that's women only. And I just did a little 15-minute training video on the concept of volunteering in the right places, because that is great opportunities, all those things you listed, to be able to test your skills, to practice things, to have people see you in a way that you can't show people through marketing and materials and all that other kind of stuff, and to build those relationships at the same time. It's so important. And so often people will say to me, oh my gosh, well, how could you do this? How could you now be on the parish
Mhm.
council in addition to everything else? And again, it's that bigger picture. So I know what my vision is. I know what my goal is, and it's to use God's skills and talents. And when I ignored hearing in church every week that they need someone on the parish council, ignored it, then my 14-year-old says, Mom, they're talking about someone being on the parish council. That's the kind of thing you should do, Mom. You should do it. No, I don't have time, honey. Then I got an email saying, we thought you would be good for this. I finally listened because it's like God's trying to say something. Because here's the thing, I'm only going into church once a month and giving my ideas and my input in a way that other people can't, because of all my different experiences. And then when they want somebody to then carry it out, which we often can get sucked into, that's when I'm smart enough to be able to help the council in pulling other volunteers in to do those roles. Because so often there's other people who want to do things, but nobody asks them or nobody meets them in the right way. So I said yes to that opportunity, knowing my limits before I went in, and knowing how I could give back and make a difference, and knowing that God kept saying, hey, I need you in this way. I need you in this way. I need you in this way. And what will come as a result is all of these people, they've built relationships with me. They know what I do. They can help refer people to me to come in and do speaking for their organization. And there's so many ways that it just multiplies in the benefits.
I mean, it really does. I mean, those relationships turn into referrals. And here's something else that happens when you do something extra, something outside, is, when you're doing it as a business owner for other businesses or other people as entrepreneurs, they have a certain expectation. They're paying you from it. And so it's almost like, that's all need based. But there is something in the energy, that energy that's conveyed when you actually do some extracurricular activities out, because those people are doing this because they're wanting to do it. But then there's also this other feeling of edification that you can get, you know and for me, I know that as well. It's why I work with PetSmart in the Southeast Valley of Phoenix, getting plushie toys for foster kids for, 3 to 4 months out of the year. I do that because there's a sense of pride without any other encumbrance that I'm just doing something that is in great service, of a higher power. But I also bring that smile of the people who charge up when I bring them those plushy toys for the kids, and that's what I mean. It's like when you're a business, I've said this for so many years. It's not about being a part from the community and just extracting, wealth out of it. It's about being a part of the community, and a part of the community is really in service, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. That's what it's all about. And I love that when I was on when I was on probably the first time with you, you had really pulled out this community aspect that's been a part of my life that I didn't realize until you had pointed that out. It's like, yeah, that's been the consistent woven thing. And where did that come from? Well, I'm one of 28 grandkids from my
Oh,
mom's side, and she's seven, has seven brothers and sisters. I'm the oldest girl out of all 28 of them. And that's a community that I grew up very close and strong to. And still am to this day. And all of my roles ever since have involved community building, and relationship building is so foundational to that community building, and getting involved in your community, and knowing people and giving back and making a difference. Those things are all just so important.
and that word of mouth is like, Jill Lublin, she's coached me a little bit, and it's that ooh ah effect of like, I've heard of her before. So that familiarity must mean that maybe she's important. And I think that is something, you can't pay to get that. You get that because you served in such a way that you became memorable. And I think that that's the beauty about what, business owners do when they serve. They become more memorable because, they're the expectation and the embracing of that owner or entrepreneur is much different. Well, Michelle, we have blown through our first segment already. I'm going to play a little sponsorship commercial, and then we're going to come back in, and let's talk a little bit more about some of the functional things that you do for business. Does that sound good?
Sounds great.
Oh, I got to find my commercial. There we go. Wow, just a little trailer for the iNetrepreneur Network community, and that's what's really interesting about it. I feel like entrepreneurs don't have enough places to go out and play like in the sandbox. Just try new things. Say things differently. You know, dress differently, just put themselves out there. And, it's not just the networking community we have, it's the magazines, it's the radio shows, it's the summits, it's the publishing, it's the ability to just create impact through our bonds. And that's one of the things that I don't think that enough organizations talk about. And that's the creation of bonds within the community that they're making, because when you start employing people, there's nothing like, people that have a great synergy with each other. And that's something that I think that you have found in certain ways. And you brought it up already. You brought up foundation, and part of what you've been blessed with is having the ability to take almost this marketing kind of sales side, and then almost kind of like this accounting kind of operational side, and you've been able to blend that, and you kind of called this like your business fabric of foundation. And what came from that was your book. Did that just come to you, Michelle, or did that book take a little bit of time, and all of a sudden you woke up and you said, I'm ready, I'm writing that book? What did that look like in that moment?
Yeah, the book, that's always an interesting story. People are surprised when they hear me. After about my first year in business, during my first year in business, I was teaching a course to help people put together the foundations of their business. And as happens with a lot of things with entrepreneurs, some people have money to invest and some people just really don't. And I was coming to the end of that first year. I knew I was going to do a lot of speaking, and it's nice to have a book when you do speaking. So I thought, you know what? Let's serve the needs of these people who aren't able to afford to come to the course and have me work hand in hand with them. And let's put stuff into a book for them. And I wrote that book in a weekend. Was written over Labor Day weekend. Probably 8-9 years ago. And it was interesting because as I was writing the book, my husband was doing some stuff next to me, and he's a teacher for high school students. And I gave him the first chapter and he read it, and he gave me lots of ideas on maybe you should put some examples of other people's missions and visions and this and that. And all these ideas he was given, I'm like, honey, those are things I would teach in the course and give away for like people investing higher dollars. But this is my book. We're not going to put all the nuggets in the book. Like, we want them to invest in coaching with me. So he then continued editing the other 18 chapters. And every time he was like, oh, it's great. It's great. I'm like, okay, he's just saying that he's afraid to give feedback now because we know how that can be. And I had a book coach working with me, and I was afraid to give it to her because I'm not like a formal writer. I write very informally, just like I speak. And my clients love that because my clients are not ones who like going to college professors and college level courses. Like, they really need it broken down for them. They're your everyday person who has a hobby or a skill and talent, and they want to turn that into profit. So they don't know all that other higher educational stuff. So I really break it down. I used the book coach. She read it, and she right away said, this is ready to be published. Well, I'm a bit of a perfectionist, and I didn't feel that that could be true. So I actually let it sit for a few weeks, and I picked it up. I looked at it with fresh eyes, and I'm like, oh my God, they weren't lying to me. This really is good, and it's ready to be published. And there were a few things I didn't have in there that I wanted to make sure to add. And so I added them and got that out. But yeah, I wrote it in a weekend, and within a month it was in my hands for the speaking event I had at the middle of October. I actually looked at the test version. We were going down to Disney with my husband's family for a family vacation, and had it delivered out there so I could look at it and make sure it was back and fully delivered when I spoke coming back from the trip.
And I can't believe that so much of this came over a weekend, but sometimes you just get the download and it's like it's there. But I want to make sure that people know that this isn't just a book that you read. This is actually a book and a workbook. This is a book that strives to get the entrepreneur to do things. So it's not just about the thought, it's about the action, isn't it? You're asking probing questions, you're calling them out to create meaning in every section. And you even have lines in the book where they're supposed to put their thoughts,
Yeah.
and I think that that's what's really different about it, because many of the books that you read, it's like you take it in and you take it informationally, but they don't actually do what I call like the lab part. And the lab part is actually taking all that information and creating an activity out of the book. And see, that's what you've done differently in your book. And see, I have it right here, you know, and it's starting to get beat
Nice.
up over time. And when you open the book up, see, there's not a lot of words there, because the entrepreneur or business owner or someone who runs a not-for-profit, they need to work. And a part of what you're challenging them to do is put those ideas out there, write those goals and intentions, list your products and services, and see if they really even serve you in the time that you're offering them. And
Yeah.
that's what I like about the book. But it's kind of interesting, and I think of book titles as too, like mine is The Art of Connection. It's all about connecting, putting our best quote, thought, and questions to the reader. It has its own feel. But your book is Be Strategic, Be Intentional, and Be Successful. Tell me a little bit about how you came up with that book title.
Yeah, that really is what it's all about. Like,
Hmm.
you have to be strategic and you have to be intentional if you want to be successful. Because so often what I see is people who they get this great idea and, oh, I want to do this, and they get this great idea and they want to do this, or this person told me I should do this, but it's feeling very uncomfortable every time I do it. But everybody says that's the way to get tons of clients, so I need to do it. And the book really helps you not only think about what your strategies are and what you're wanting to do, but how does that work in alignment with you? Or is that really working? Like, how do you want your life to be? I have a client who she lives out in Florida, and she's already retired, and she's building a business where she goes into senior communities and she does budgeting with seniors for them so that they don't have, she'll pay their bills, and she does that sort of thing for them. And as she was surprised that in her first 6 months of working with me, her life changed as much as her business changed. And she said towards the end, I'm thinking about this and I'm trying to figure out how many hours I really want to work every week. And I don't want to work 40 hours. I want to work just 10 hours a week because my mom's looking to come move down with us. And I want to enjoy these days with my mom before she's gone. So it's like, okay, so how do we build this then? How do we make sure that you can still make the money that you want to make in those 10 hours a week? What do we cut out to meet that goal? And what do we make sure is in there to meet that goal? And for each person, it's a unique answer. So that's the beauty of the book. I have lots of people who have done the book multiple times and even been in business for 10 years and come back to it multiple times throughout the year when things start shifting in their business to just get regrounded and more clear.
Absolutely. And it really made me think about something because, one of the areas in the book is what makes a successful business owner. But what it really kind of gets me is this is what happens to the entrepreneur is, if they don't really have a strategic plan for their business, then their business becomes the plan. And what I mean by that is there's too many entrepreneurs out there that if they're not foundational, if they're not grounded, their life gets taken away because the business plan, right? The business plan of an entrepreneur's life should actually fit within the life plan. And so what happens is if you don't fit it within the life plan, then your life plan actually fits in within your business plan. And that's where entrepreneurs start to fail because then they get to the point of burnout. And right? Am I right? It
Mm-hmm.
happens so often, and you go, but one of the statements you have in there is what makes a successful business owner, is you look at like you have to start in one area, and that is your mission and that is your vision. And a lot of people, they kind of think that those are interchangeable words, but quite frankly, they're not, are they?
No, not at all. Not at all. And it's interesting. So I'm going to pause before I go into that topic to mention you said you love this part of being a successful business owner. I mentioned earlier that when they told me the book was ready to go to press, and I'm like, no, there's a couple things I need to put in. One was actually in that chapter, and it was on the topic of making mistakes. Because if you're going to be a successful business owner, you have to be okay with making mistakes. That's how we learn. That's how we can improve things, is by making mistakes. And I hadn't written that in that chapter yet. So I'm like, that definitely has to go in there before it could print. But to the point of mission and vision, so often people will think, again, back to the college professor stuff, is this mission formatted the way it really should be? Is it like, do I have the right pronouns and this and that? And I'm like, that doesn't matter. Like, nuts and bolts, what's in your heart that you really want to do in the world? And the mission is the what you want to do and how you're going to do it. The vision is what's the impact that's then making on the world? How is the world different because you're carrying out your mission? Or everything falls into place.
And see, one of the things I will tell people, when it comes to a mission, of course, part of my idea of a mission comes from my military background. Missions can be short served or they can be long sighted, and so you have to sometimes look at short term, intermediate, and long term goals. But one of the things I think business owners don't do enough of is, my question is how often do you read your own mission? How often is it seen? And then how often does it need to change? Because the mission part of it's not like it's set in concrete and that's what it will be forever. A mission can be changeable over time, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, you should definitely look at that from time to time. And I encourage my clients to look at that every morning. It's something I've really gotten in the habit of, because what you're doing is you're reminding God of what you're wanting in the world and the process of carrying out his mission for you and his goals for you. And yeah, it's so important. And when I work with my clients, the first thing they all do, whether they work with me in my online programs and kind of do the
Yeah.
DIY approach, or whether they work in my group coaching, or whether they work in my private coaching, the first thing is always answering every question in that book. And then that from there, it's putting together a plan for the next 6 months to a year. And then I do within my group coaching and my private coaching, every quarter we do this quarterly deep dive. I'm actually training an organization this evening on that. And we look at the last quarter, we see what worked and what didn't work. We look at our goals for the next quarter, and then we adapt them based on what we learned. So we are constantly re-looking at things and tweaking things and seeing, does this make sense? Does this not make sense? And the more you get to know yourself, the more that mission and that vision, like it'll change based on where you're at in terms of, like you said, the nuts and bolts, the army type, but that purpose that you have should still be uniquely underlying, and that purpose on where you want to go in the world, where you think God is calling you, that likely won't change. For me, it really doesn't. And the mission changes based on what's happening at this point in time in
Right.
alignment with the purpose.
Yeah, and that's why it's so I think important to understand the difference between a mission and a vision. I mean, a vision to me is like, what's it's your projection, you know, but your mission is like, it's kind of like going this continuum of time and external and internal changes, and that would change a little bit. But yeah, for me, and I might be wrong, I might be different on my vision. You let me know, but to me, my vision is having a worldwide networking sandbox where every entrepreneur can go so they can grow. I have a vision for that. That's, to me, is not going to change. That's my spirit,
Yeah.
that's my heart, that's my purpose. But to get there, right, my mission may change.
Yeah.
I mean, one day for 2 years it might have been all in-person networking, then COVID comes, and guess what, my mission is like, well, I got to go all online. And that's the way I look at the difference between mission and vision. And I was wondering if you see it that way as well.
I love that, because if you go back to what I had shared earlier, the mission really is what you're doing and how you're doing it, right? So
Yeah.
when you say online versus in person, we're doing networking. Maybe the world changes and it's not networking anymore. Maybe it's something else, right? But so that mission may change, but the vision is still to have this place for these entrepreneurs and this sandbox. And what that looks like may change, but your impact is really on all those different entrepreneurs.
Yeah. And
Absolutely.
yeah, and just thank you for entertaining me on that, because I guess, that's where so many people, they come to me and they said, I don't understand. I got this mission and they want a vision, and I have to go donate my blood, and I don't know. It's just too much, and I try to explain to them, what it looks like. But here's another thing, and I really want to get this in there. In that first part of a foundation, it's a place, that you talk about, not you, I'm just in general, the community always talks about having the right people, to work with, and using your voice and casting it to the right audience. And I get that, and that is so needed. But you phrase the internal part of this, to expand and scale, and whatever the gifts of that entrepreneur business owner, that they need a support team. And when I'm reading of that, it's not just an accountant. I mean, it may be, even someone who helps with just, even mental health. It's all in at all times, a support team, of 50 years ago isn't what a support team necessarily looks like in today's age, especially with the advent of, emotional quotient. And I think that that's a very important area to kind of let our viewers know, in terms of what you're talking about. What does that support team look like, and how does it benefit those entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And so, before answering that, let me frame that this book
Yeah.
and this workbook we're taking the clients on a journey through. It's a 3-part process. The first is building the foundation, which we talked about with the mission and vision and some other things like that. The next part is what I call the nuts and bolts, the what you do and how you do it. And the last part I call the extras. That's all the marketing stuff that so many people jump into first. And you can't do that unless you first have your foundation and you know what you're doing and how you're doing it. And so many times people make a mistake and they jump right into the marketing, and then they confuse people because they don't know even what they're doing or how they're doing it. So the support team, that's part of that second part. That's part of what you're doing and how you're doing it. And so often, a couple things with support team. First of all, people will try to do everything on their own. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm just starting. I don't have a lot of dollars in there. I need to do it on my own. Or there's the thought of, there's this pride part there. If I ask for help, it means I don't know anything. So I have to do this on my own. I can't reach out to somebody else. And that's so not true. And that's where groups like INET are wonderful, and groups like Rotary and these other organizations that we mentioned to go volunteer at or network at and get involved in, because you find other people there that are supports for you. You find people who are doing what you've done.
I got to jump in on that, because that is so important, and I don't have enough, I don't have enough discussion on that. The thing is, what makes networking so powerful to me, it's not just the referrals, it's the conversations. And what I really mean by that is, if you can engage in the different conversations with the different entrepreneurs and business owners, what happens is there's probably, out of every 10 people in a room, 2, 3, 4, or even 5 entrepreneurs who are going through what you want are going through now.
Yeah.
There is and that's where the real gold is, because you can always find more clients, but if you don't change the process or the structure or the flexibility of your business, you will still make the same mistakes on prospect number 1 as prospect 100 as prospect 1000. But by having those conversations, you start to learn better ways, don't you?
Oh my gosh, you so do. And you not only learn better ways for your business, you learn them for your life. Like you said earlier, too, the two really blend together. They really, really do. And we moved last October into a short sale home, and the process was like nothing I've ever gone through before. And I relied on so many people that, from networking that I had met, that I never would have got through that process in the same way if I didn't. From the very first person, there's somebody that I see every week. It's a mindset coach, because as you're building a business, that's someone on my support team. Life gets so overwhelming. And especially when you're a coach and you're helping the whole rest of the world, and a busy mom and a volunteer, like, you need somebody to say to you, start being nicer to Michelle. Like, that's oftentimes what she says to me. You're doing awesome things. Be nicer to yourself. Stop these terrible thoughts in your head. And
help you condense a few of those hours.
exactly. And one of the things she said to me in the beginning, we were talking, and I said, we've been wanting to move. We've been in the same house for 25 years, and I had been talking about moving forever. And the market at the time was crazy, with people having to look for tons of time and finding houses and putting bids and not getting them. And I had said to her, I need to have so much money in savings before we can get into the house. And I want our credit score to go to this. And I don't have the emotional bandwidth right now to be told no when I find a house I like and then not be able to have it. And she said to me, well, what if all that didn't have to be true? And I'm like, I don't know. She's like, well, why don't you start exploring that? So just that one little statement had me then talk to a financial person who could take care of our mortgage. And she was able to say, no, you don't have to get your credit score perfect by then. This is a good time. I was able to pull in an agent who know how to do stuff. I was able to pull in a designer to help me figure out how to design the house. I mean, this whole thing was from people I met networking, helping that. And even my son was going through depression through the time, and people met through networking had experience with that too, to be able to help. So there's so much that like comes from these relationships that
It,
help
it,
you, that are your support team.
Yeah, and my mom did it best one time. She illustrated what that looked like, and like look behind you, you have a bookshelf. Now imagine you have bookshelf after bookshelf off the books, and she says, you know what, it's kind of like off shelving someone to something else. Because if you keep taking the books off the shelf, taking the books off the shelf, taking the books off the shelf, eventually you get tired. You know what? So it's okay to have someone else take some of those books off the shelf for you. And that is the place where you get to have some time to grow. And I will always remember that from her, because she's so right. If we do it
Yeah.
all ourselves, what we do is we end up getting to the point of tired, and that takes away our real enthusiasm and passion of what we originally sent out to do. And so
Yeah.
she's like, if you find someone to help you take those books off the shelf, and even put them back on there, you will grow and go a lot faster than just always doing it on your own. And
Yeah.
your bookshelf just reminded me of that.
Yeah, that what a great analogy. And that's so true. And that's where we mentioned passion earlier. Coming back to that passion. When I notice I'm
Yeah.
doing something and I don't feel passionate about it, that's when I know I need to pull in someone from my support team. As a matter of fact, I was doing that just the other day. I had a series of things that I was, on this interview here. I'm speaking later today. I have a couple other speaking things coming up, and people need information ahead of time. So that's the kind of thing that my assistant would normally do for me, because I don't like doing that administrative stuff. It doesn't fuel me, and it takes me away from the interactions that I'm having with my clients or
Yeah.
doing things like this. Well, my assistant wasn't available. So I now was doing all this stuff, and I'm like, oh my God, I totally hate this. This is why I have an assistant doing this. So it's when you have those feelings inside, our body tells us so many things, and it's listening to how we feel. And when that passion isn't there, that's when we know pull in a support team person.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Everyone, I am with Michelle Smith, keynote speaker, trainer, coach, and owner of Z&B Consulting, calling in, being on Zoom all the way from Chicagoland area. She can be reached at Michelle with two L's at zmbconsulting.com, or call her at 815-690-4600. She's brave enough to put her phone number out there, everyone. Please just give her a call. Michelle, we're going to come back, and we are going to be in our third segment, and I have another direction to take us in, and so I can't wait till we get to that.
Sounds great.
Network together. It's all about connections. Expand your sphere of influence. Build relationships. Be part of something bigger. Be part of Network Together.
Again, I'm with Michelle Smith, keynote speaker, trainer, coach, and owner of Z&B Consulting. So glad that you are with us today. You can reach her at Michelle with two L's at zmbconsulting.com, or call her at 815-690-4600. That's 4600. Why I said that in the last segment at the end is I so much of the time, we put our energy and our resources into just certain things that we can wrap our heads around. Small businesses and entrepreneurs, and so there's coaches, there's resources, there's, networking groups. There is a lot of covered space in that area. But one of the things that I've always found very fascinating is you also work with a space that doesn't seem to be talked about too much unless there's a collection drive, going on, or a blood drive, or a clothing drive, or help us pay the rent drive, and that's the area of nonprofits. And it's really interesting to me because of all the business owners and entrepreneurs that I've met, and I've met many over the last decade, I would say you're the only one that I've come across personally that really puts nonprofits out there front and center, as you being that expert. The question I have is, why aren't not nonprofits talked about in the business and entrepreneurial community?
Yeah, that's a very good question because they are just so similar. It's so often a lot of the nonprofits I work with, they often start by someone who has this entrepreneurial spirit. They want to do good in the world, so they're doing good, and oh gosh, I should make it a nonprofit. And I can't tell you how many times I've had conversations with those people that say, it's a lot of work to start a business, let alone a nonprofit. Like, is there someone else who's already doing that you can maybe go work for them or something like that, or volunteer for them and still do something else? And that's not what they want. They want to make this difference in the world doing their nonprofit thing. And so I then help them with setting that up and doing that good in the world. And yeah, they're so very similar that it's a shame that they're not talked about as much.
But there is a ledger of things, so to speak, that needs to be done, for a traditional nonprofit than regular businesses have. Is that correct?
Oh, yes. From things like volunteers and fundraising and donors, all of that sort of thing. Yeah, lots of different things in that respect, for
I-
sure.
i- And is there more oversight truly when it comes to a nonprofit than versus regular business?
I think so because nonprofits have boards and those boards are looking out for that nonprofit and for those interests and so a lot of times sometimes nonprofits are harder for me to come in and sign contracts with than the average entrepreneur because there's lots of checks and balances. There was actually one I was working with recently and the one of the employees who oversaw an entire department, she wanted me to come in and do training for her team and to work with them on kind of getting a plan in place. And so
Yeah.
we were going to have them do the book and I was going to spend a half a day putting their plan together with them and listening with them, doing brainstorming and strategizing. And then she went to the head person and the head person was like, well, this isn't what we need. We can't have this happen and our board won't approve this. And so, it's not just when you're an entrepreneur, you kind of got your own decisions that you're making. And this seems to make sense. Let me do this. There's not those extra levels in there. And then there's definitely not the board, which even like the small businesses have those extra levels of supervisory stuff, but they don't then have the boards that they're reporting to in the same way. So
Right. And
and the
then
community, they have to be careful too as a nonprofit what the community is going to think. Like that's what the head had said. Well, if we pay you this to do this and we don't pay other people that, what's our community going to think? And our community doesn't have the dollars in this way or that way. And so there's lots of different, it's a complicated, I've had people say to me as I've continued with that actual nonprofit I'm referring to, it was probably a 2-month process of me trying to get this contract signed to where at the very end, I was like, you know what, I'm out. Like, I can't
Wow.
continue to spend time on this as much as I wanted to help you guys. This isn't going to be effective at this point. And, but through that whole 2 months, I had so many people say, oh my gosh, you have such patience. How do you, we don't have the patience that you have, but I see that bigger vision and I see the difference that my supporting them can make in the world. And so I'm willing to be more patient and to go that extra step for them. And a lot of times other people aren't.
Well, and it really takes, both patience, but it also really takes, strong convictions too when you're working with, because many of the nonprofits, not only do they have their board, they also have an advisory board. You're working with an executive director. Many times executive directors have a certain term, the boards have certain terms, and what worked for for 2 years, all of a sudden everything's being changed and overturned. I'm sure you've seen that as well, right?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, that was actually what had me finally
Okay.
throw my hands up with this organization, because we were coming to the end of their fiscal year,
Mm.
and the lady had said, "Well, this job that we wanted you to do, now it's not going to be effective because it has to be done by the middle of June, and here we are in May and we still haven't started, even though I had been talking to them since the beginning of April." And so I'm like, "Yeah, now you're wanting me to take this job that should have been 2 months, put it into like 4 weeks and have it get effective results. Like, that's not going to happen. And then you're going to be upset with me later, and the board's going to be upset with me. And I can't do that. So no, like, if you want me for something else, come ask me. But this particular project, we can't do anymore because we've run out of time and there was a changing of staff at that point because of the changing of the fiscal year."
Yeah, and it's so crazy, and I only say it because I know it too. I've been in that position. I have worked for boards. I've been in that seat. I've worked for different not-for-profit districts even in San Diego, and then you have like county and city oversight, and there's so much transparency you have to have when you're working with all these different agencies, and they have all the different reporting, and which makes me go, Michelle, are you crazy? Why are you doing this? Why is nonprofit, something that you promote out there? Because the first thing that comes to mind is Robert Frost and A Road Less Traveled. So I mean, to me, you're definitely taking the road less traveled, and I have to ask you, because I've never asked you this question. What was that like like ignition point, or that insight point that said, what, I know it might look like crazy over here, but I still need to do it.
Yeah. So, oh gosh, I got chills just getting ready to answer this to you. And that's what I know is a download from God coming up above. Really, it goes back to that passion. So
Mm,
I have changed how I work with volunteer or with nonprofits for that reason. So when I first started my business, some of my first nonprofits, I was doing the work for them. So I was doing their marketing, I was doing their fundraising, running their events, and it was a lot. And then I got to the point where it wasn't just me. I had a team that
hmm
the stuff I didn't want to do, their newsletters, their social media posts, I was subcontracting that out. And I was just doing the strategy and vision. And in that situation too, gosh, this was a few years pre-COVID, they got to the end of their calendar year and realized we could be paying a college student a heck of a lot less than we're paying you and your team to do our social media. The board doesn't think this is a good financial decision, so we're only going to use you for strategy, and we're going to bring somebody else in hourly to do this other stuff. So at that point I said to myself, you know what, I am going to help them bring volunteers in, bring interns in to do that day-to-day stuff, and I'm only going to strategize with them, and I'll help them be able to work well within their budgets. That then made my life a lot more simple. And that's where this most recent one that I told a story about a second ago, that was where that one started getting a little weird, because I originally was coming in under that new model. I'm going to
yeah.
give you strategy, I'm going to show you how to do it. But the executive director wanted me doing the hands-on work. So it was not only was this going to be all convoluted due to the changes, I was also going to be doing their actual work of coming up with actual flyers for them. And it's like, I don't do that in my business anymore. So I
Yeah.
have said no to those things. And I go in now in one-off situations to help them put nuts and bolts together, or to train their staff in a half-day training. And the reason I continue to do it, even though sometimes I have to give a little bit of a discount because their budgets might be different than a for-profit,
Right.
it's that passion. Because early in my business, when I worked for over 20 years for other people, it was mainly for, as you heard from that list, nonprofits, schools, hospitals, all of those people like myself. they get burnt out so easily. You're constantly doing good for the rest of the world and thinking, oh, I'm doing good, but you're not doing good for yourself in the process.
Right.
So that's now part of my purpose, part of my mission is to go back to these places and to let these people working for them know you can do this differently. You can do this and work smarter, not harder. And you don't have to be exhausted while you're also serving the community. So that's why I do it, because I want those people to be benefited in a way that I wasn't way back then. I wish someone would have taught me different, because that would have made it so much easier to continue working for nonprofits. And it just didn't make sense at that point.
Well, Michelle, I love that phrase, working smarter and not harder. And, if you're a nonprofit out there and you feel like you're in the throes of chaos and you want to get to the throes of calm, please get with Michelle. Or if you're an entrepreneur or a business, believe me, if she can work with nonprofits, I'm sure she could be working with a for-profit business. Michelle, it's been such a great tour going around a little bit deeper dive of your life and who you are and what you do and your passions. I want to say thank you for being on the show today. Again, if you want to reach Michelle Smith, I love it. I'm Jones. She's Smith. It doesn't get better than that. She's a keynote speaker, trainer, coach, and owner of Z&B Consulting. She's in the Chicagoland area, but you know what? Zoom makes her global, worldwide. Please reach out to her by emailing Michelle with 2 L's at zmbconsulting.com, or just call her, pick up the phone or text her at 815-690-4600. Michelle, so much. Are there any other ways that people can find you or get a hold of you?
Yeah, my website, which is the same as the end of my email, zmbconsulting.com. You can purchase my book directly on the website or sign up for any of my coaching services. There's information on there. And I will actually be back in the Phoenix area the middle of September. So if anyone wants to do some coffee when I'm out or do some coaching sessions, I'd love to do that in person with you when I'm in that area for the week.
Well, I'm really hoping you stay until September 22nd, because we have our Art of Connection Summit coming up as well. So we're really excited about that. Michelle, it's been a delight. I love getting to get with you on the phone. We need to get some more time with each other. I said the first time, the only time I really get good time with you is when I put you on the show. So we have to create some new habits. Again, with Michelle Smith, keynote speaker, trainer, and consultant of Z&B Consulting. It's such a delight. I hope you're going to have a great and safe 4th of July weekend.
Thank you. You too, Robert. Thanks.
Thanks again, Michelle. Thanks for being on the show today. Well, again, we are here each and every week, Thursdays from 2:30 to 3:30, this crazy Arizona time. Please, make this show a part of your weekly, roundup, your weekly commitment. I promise to bring great people and discuss great things on the show. Have a great day. Have a safe holiday weekend this 4th of July. And until next time, be safe, everyone. Thanks. Bye-bye.
You've been watching the iNetrepreneur Show, a production of the iNetrepreneur Radio Network, with host Robert W. Jones. Join Robert each week as he visits with new and exciting guests who inspire, teach, and mentor entrepreneurs worldwide. Follow Robert each Thursday at 1:30 p.m. Pacific, 4:30 p.m. Eastern, and 8:30 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time.